For most people, bringing a new bed home for the kids is a happy moment, a sign that your family is growing and putting down roots. But for one family in Wisconsin, back in the late 1980s, a simple second-hand bunk bed wasn't a gift, it was a curse. They thought they had finally found their dream home, but they had just unknowingly invited a nightmare inside. It was a nightmare that would terrorize their children, push their sanity to the brink, and ultimately force them to run for their lives in the middle of the night, leaving everything they owned behind. This is the creepy, and supposedly true, story of the Tallman family and the haunted bunk bed that seemed to have a life of its own. It started with whispers and strange illnesses that doctors couldn't explain. Then came the children's terrifying visions at night. But it didn't stop there. It escalated into something far more sinister. A disembodied voice from the garage calling out a threat, a swirling fog of mist and fire, and finally, a moment of sheer terror that forced Alan and Deborah Tallman to grab their kids and flee their home on a frigid January night in 1988. For 9 horrific months, this family was tormented by an unseen force. And according to them, it all began the day they brought home the bunk bed. Let's rewind to 1986. In the small, quiet city of Horicon, Wisconsin, Alan and Deborah Tallman, along with their young kids, moved into a new house on Larrabee Street. It looked like the classic American dream. Alan had a steady job, and Debbie was a stay-at-home mom. They were a normal, church-going family, excited to build a life in what seemed like a perfectly peaceful community. The house was new, hopes were high, and for a while, everything was completely normal. They had no history of seeking attention, no interest in the paranormal, and no reason to think their new chapter would be anything but happy. But that all changed in February of 1987. To make more space for their growing family, they went to a local second-hand shop and picked up a used bunk bed. It was a simple, practical purchase, the kind of thing thousands of families do. They had no idea where it came from or who owned it before them. They brought it home, put it together, and placed it in the children's bedroom, completely unaware that they had just set the stage for a 9-month descent into hell. The weird stuff started almost as soon as the bunk bed was assembled. It began with little things that were easy to ignore. The family's oldest son, whose room was next to the one with the new bed, complained that his clock radio was changing stations all by itself. The Tallman children, who were hardly ever sick, suddenly started suffering from one unexplained illness after another. At first, Alan and Debbie just brushed it off. Kids get sick, and old houses make strange noises. It was easy to find rational explanations. But then the children's complaints became more specific and much more frightening. They started talking about seeing an ugly old woman in their room at night. They said she had long, dark hair and a terrifying glow, almost like she was on fire. The girls became so scared they refused to sleep in the new bed, begging to sleep with their parents instead. The house itself seemed to turn on them. Doors would slam shut on their own. A rocking chair was seen moving by itself, and voices would call out from empty rooms. And the activity always seemed to be centered around the children's bedroom, the room with the bunk bed. After a few months, things went from subtle to openly aggressive. The paranormal activity wasn't just targeting the kids anymore. The parents were now experiencing it firsthand. Alan and Deborah would hear footsteps in empty hallways. They watched as a chair and a suitcase moved across the floor by themselves. Whatever this thing was, it was getting bolder. The family's pastor, Reverend Wayne Dobratz, was called to the house. After walking through it, he reportedly told the family he felt a demonic presence and performed a blessing, but it didn't work. The activity only got worse, becoming more personal and more menacing. One day, Alan came home late and found the garage door opening and closing on its own. Later, while working in the basement, he heard a deep, guttural voice call his name and taunt him. Fed up and angry that his children were living in constant fear, Alan supposedly screamed into the empty house, "Pick on me, leave my kids alone." According to Alan, the entity took him up on that offer. A few days later, he was confronted by a terrifying, gassy apparition that rose from the floor. He described it as a swirling mass of flames with green eyes staring out from the center. And then, a voice came from it with a simple, chilling message: "You're dead." The warning was unmistakable. This was no longer just a haunting. It was a direct threat. What would you do if you were in their shoes? When a blessing from a pastor doesn't work and the threats become that direct, do you stay and fight for your home, or do you get out? It's a terrifying question. It makes you wonder where the line is between what we can explain and what we can't. If you find mysteries like this as fascinating as I do, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the other strange stories we'll be exploring. The breaking point finally came on a freezing Wisconsin night, January 11th, 1988. A relative, who was a hardened skeptic, was babysitting the kids while Alan worked late. That night, the babysitter witnessed the exact same horrific vision Alan had described. A swirling fog of fire with malevolent eyes staring back. When the Tallmans got home, the babysitter's terrified account was the final straw. For 9 months they had tried to rationalize, to fight back, and to find some way to live with the terror. But now, they knew it was hopeless. In the middle of the night, Alan and Debbie made a split-second decision. They grabbed their children and fled, leaving behind nearly everything: their furniture, their clothes, all their possessions. They escaped into the cold, abandoning the home they had worked so hard for without a second thought, because they truly believed that staying even one more night was a risk they couldn't afford to take. The house on Larrabee Street, once a symbol of their future, was now just a place of terror they would never return to. The Tallman family's story quickly became a local sensation, drawing media attention and crowds of curious people to the now empty house. The family, who had never wanted publicity, suddenly found themselves in the middle of a media storm. The Dodge County Sheriff's Office looked into it but found no evidence of a prank or any criminal activity. While no obvious medical cause for their shared experiences could be found, the story even caught the attention of the popular TV show Time's Unsolved Mysteries *, which brought their terrifying tale to a national audience in an episode that aired in October 1988. But what about the source of all the terror? The Tallmans were convinced the bunk bed was the conduit for whatever evil had invaded their lives. In February 1988, they made a final decision. They took the bed to a private, undisclosed landfill. According to Deborah Tallman, they made sure it was buried and plowed under, so that no one could ever find it or use it again. And it seems they were right about the bed. The family who bought the house from the Tallmans reported no paranormal activity. Subsequent owners have also lived there peacefully. It appeared the haunting was never in the house or on the land, but inside the wooden frame of that second-hand bunk bed. After it was destroyed, the activity stopped for good. Now, of course, you have to ask, was this really a ghost? There are skeptical explanations. Some have suggested that toxic mold in the old wooden bed frame could have caused shared hallucinations and illness, which might explain some of the family's symptoms. Others point to the power of suggestion and shared psychological stress as a possible reason for the escalating events. But the Tallman family has always stuck to their story, insisting that what they went through was real. Their account is supported by the sheer number of witnesses, from their pastor to their once skeptical relative, who all claim to have experienced something inexplicable in that house. The case remains one of America's most chilling and well-documented stories of a haunted object. It serves as a stark reminder to be careful about the second-hand items you bring into your home, because you never really know their history. The house on Larrabee Street still stands today, quiet and unassuming. The bunk bed is buried deep under the Wisconsin soil, its power hopefully gone forever. But the mystery lingers. Was it a malevolent spirit, a demonic entity, or something else entirely? What do you think was really going on with that bunk bed? Let me know your theories in the comments below.